The void of space stretched endlessly around the Earth colonial survey ship Pioneer as it drifted through the outer rim territories. Captain Jake Murphy stood on the bridge watching the stars through the viewport. This was humanity's first journey beyond the known galaxy, and everything felt different here. The stars seemed colder, more distant. "Captain, we're picking up something on long-range sensors," announced Lisa Chen from the pilot's seat. Her fingers danced across the control panel as data streamed across her screens. "It's big. Multiple contacts, moving information." Murphy moved to the sensor station where Nick Rodriguez was hunched over his displays. The communications officer's face was pale as he studied the readings. "Sir, these ships are massive. At least 10 times our size, and there are 12 of them moving in perfect coordination." "Any response to our standard greeting transmissions?" Murphy asked. Rodriguez shook his head. "Nothing, sir. But they've definitely detected us. The formation just changed course. They're heading straight for us." In the Marine quarters below, Sergeant Amy Collins was cleaning her rifle when the ship's alert klaxon began blaring. She grabbed her gear and headed for the bridge, knowing that peaceful exploration missions didn't usually require Marine presence unless something had gone very wrong. The alien ships appeared on the main screen as sleek, predatory vessels that seemed designed for hunting. Their dark hulls reflected no light, and strange energy signatures pulsed along their surfaces. As the Pioneer's crew watched, the alien formation spread out in what any military tactician would recognize as an attack pattern. "Captain," Rodriguez called out, his voice tight with fear, "we're receiving a transmission. It's not like anything in our databases." The bridge speakers crackled to life with sounds that made every human present feel a primal chill. Deep, rumbling vocalizations mixed with clicking sounds that seemed to come from creatures that viewed other beings as food. When the universal translator finally engaged, the words that emerged were simple and terrifying. "Soft creatures in metal shell. You are now prey. Surrender and die quickly, or resist and provide sport for the hunt." Murphy felt his blood run cold, but his military training kicked in. "Battle stations. All hands, this is not a drill." The Pioneer's defensive systems came online, but everyone knew they were vastly outgunned. The ship had been designed for exploration, not warfare. Its weapons were meant for clearing debris and defending against pirates, not fighting a fleet of alien warships. The first alien ship to attack moved with a grace that spoke of millions of years of evolutionary refinement. It was a predator in every sense of the word, and it had never encountered prey that could effectively fight back. The energy blast that struck the Pioneer's shield sent shockwaves through the hull. "Shields down to 60%, Chen reported as she fought to keep the ship stable. Hull integrity holding, but barely." Through the viewports, the crew could see their attackers more clearly now. The alien ships disgorged smaller craft that moved like a pack of wolves closing in for the kill. But there was something about their movements that caught Murphy's attention. They were coordinated, yes, but in a way that seemed almost instinctual. "Collins, I need you to prepare for a boarding action," Murphy ordered. "If we're going down, we're taking some of them with us." The Marine sergeant nodded grimly. "Understood, sir. How many are we talking about?" "However many it takes." The alien vessels continued their attack, but something strange happened. Instead of the panic and confusion they expected from their prey, the humans began executing tactical maneuvers that seemed familiar, yet wrong. The Pioneer's pilot was making decisions that suggested she understood the nature of pack hunting, but she was using that knowledge in ways the aliens had never encountered. Chen pushed the Pioneer through a series of evasive maneuvers that should have been impossible for a ship of its size. She used the larger alien vessels as cover, forcing the smaller attack craft to change their approach patterns. It was the kind of thinking that came from a species that had spent centuries fighting. Others just as intelligent as themselves. The breakthrough came when one of the alien attack craft got too close to the Pioneer's docking bay. Collins had been waiting for exactly this opportunity. As the alien vessel attempted to attach itself for boarding, she explosive decompressed the bay, creating enough chaos to board the alien ship instead. What she found inside changed everything. The aliens were magnificent predators, standing nearly 9 feet tall with natural armor plating and claws designed for ripping apart prey. They moved with the fluid coordination of pack hunters, but when Collins engaged them in combat, she discovered something important. They had never fought anything that fought back with intelligence and tactical awareness. The first alien warrior she encountered clearly expected her to flee or freeze in terror. Instead, Collins used her military training to turn the creature's size and strength against it. She moved through the alien ship's corridors using cover and concealment, picking off targets with precise shots while avoiding direct confrontation. The aliens were individually superior fighters, but they had evolved to hunt prey animals that relied on instinct rather than tactical thinking. Collins was a product of a species that had been warring with itself for thousands of years. Every move she made was calculated to exploit weaknesses that the aliens didn't even know they had. By the time she had eliminated 3 alien warriors and stolen crucial data from their computer systems, the tide of the battle had shifted. The alien pack leader, Scareth, was beginning to realize that these soft-looking creatures might be more dangerous than they appeared. The Pioneer managed to escape, but not before inflicting damage that should have been impossible. As the human ship limped back toward Earth space, both species began to reassess their understanding of the universe. Scareth stared at the tactical recordings of the engagement, trying to understand what had gone wrong. His pack had faced thousands of species over the millennia, and they had always won through superior coordination and predatory instincts. But these humans had fought like nothing he had ever encountered. They seemed to understand pack tactics, but they used that understanding in ways that turned the hunters into the hunted. On the Pioneer, Murphy reviewed Collins's intelligence data with growing alarm and excitement. The aliens were apex predators who had dominated the galaxy for thousands of years, but they had a crucial weakness. They had never faced a species that had evolved to fight its own kind. As both sides prepared for what they knew would be an inevitable rematch, the stage was set for a conflict that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. The question was no longer whether humans could survive first contact with an alien species. The question was whether the galaxy's apex predators could survive first contact with humanity. The news of first contact spread through both civilizations like wildfire, but the reactions could not have been more different. On the Vraktar homeworld, Supreme Hunter Zarketh dismissed pack leader Scareth's report with the contempt reserved for failed hunters making excuses. "You claim that soft creatures with no natural weapons defeated 3 of our warriors?" Zarketh's voice carried the rumbling menace that had intimidated countless species over the millennia. "Perhaps your pack has grown weak from too many easy hunts." Scareth's armored hide bristled with barely controlled rage, but he held his tongue. The Supreme Hunter had not witnessed the impossible tactical awareness these humans displayed. He had not seen how they turned predatory instincts into weaknesses, or how they fought with a coordination that seemed to anticipate every pack movement. "Supreme Hunter, these creatures are different," Scareth insisted. "They do not fight like prey. They fight like us but wrong, as if they understand the hunt but have twisted it into something else." Zarketh rose from his throne, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. "There is no species in the galaxy that can match Vraktar coordination. We have ruled for 3,000 years because we are the perfect predators. These humans will learn this truth when we return with a proper hunting fleet." Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Karen Blake stood before the emergency session of the Global Defense Council. The holographic display showed the tactical data recovered from the alien vessel, and every military leader in the room understood the implications. Humanity had just encountered a species that could end their civilization. "The data suggests they call themselves the Vraktar," Blake announced to the assembled officers. "They've been the dominant military force in this galaxy for thousands of years. Their technology is superior to ours in almost every category." General Steve Parker leaned forward in his chair, studying the alien ship schematics. "Almost every category, Admiral? Their tactical doctrine appears to be based on pack hunting behaviors," Blake replied. "Natural coordination, overwhelming force, and the assumption that their prey will flee or freeze when confronted. They've never encountered a species that fights back with strategic intelligence." Colonel Tony Martinez spoke up from his position at the table. "What kind of casualties are we looking at if they return in force?" Dr. Susan Gray, the xenobiologist who had been analyzing the alien remains, cleared her throat. "Gentlemen, I think you're asking the wrong question. The issue isn't whether we can match their individual combat capability. The issue is whether they can adapt to facing a species that has spent its entire evolutionary history fighting itself." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Every human military doctrine, from ancient warfare to modern special operations, had been developed to fight other humans. Creatures just as intelligent, adaptable, and ruthless as themselves. Captain Murphy, still recovering from his injuries, was present via video link from the medical bay. The sergeant was able to eliminate 3 of their warriors using standard marine tactics. They're individually superior, but they rely on instinctual behaviors that can be predicted. Major Dan Foster, the military strategist assigned to develop countermeasures, pulled up a tactical analysis on the main screen. Look at their attack patterns. Perfect pack coordination but no tactical flexibility. They've never needed to adapt their strategies because they've never faced intelligent resistance. Blake nodded grimly. We have perhaps 6 months before they return with a larger force. Every military unit on Earth is being mobilized under unified command. This isn't about national defense anymore. This is about species survival. The preparations that followed represented the largest military coordination effort in human history. Ancient rivalries were set aside as former enemies worked together to develop strategies for fighting an alien invasion. The irony was not lost on anyone that humanity's greatest weakness, its tendency toward constant warfare, might become its greatest strength. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner found himself assigned to develop new fighter tactics specifically designed to counter Vraktar pack coordination. His team included pilots from every major military force on Earth, and they quickly discovered that human aerial combat doctrine was already perfectly suited for fighting pack hunters. The key is that they hunt like wolves, Turner explained to his squadron during a briefing. They surround, they coordinate, they strike as one. But wolves have never had to deal with prey that could think 3 moves ahead. Sergeant Pete Richardson led similar training sessions for ground forces. His Marines practiced combat scenarios based on the intelligence Collins had gathered, learning to exploit the aliens' reliance on pack instincts. They're bigger, stronger, and tougher than us, Richardson told his troops, but they fight like animals. Smart animals, but animals nonetheless. We fight like humans who have been killing other humans for 10,000 years. The difference in approach became clear during the war games that followed. Human forces consistently defeated scenarios where they were outnumbered and outgunned, using tactics that relied on deception, misdirection, and strategic depth. The Vraktar fought with the assumption that superior force would always prevail. Humans fought with the knowledge that sometimes the smaller, weaker opponent could win through superior planning and tactical flexibility. Dr. Gray's research revealed disturbing details about Vraktar society. They were apex predators who had never faced serious resistance. Their entire culture was built around the hunt, and they literally could not comprehend a species that had evolved to fight its own kind. They see warfare as predation, she explained to the Defense Council. Strong hunts weak, weak dies, cycle continues. But human warfare is different. We fight creatures just as intelligent as ourselves, which means we've had to develop strategies that assume our opponents can think and adapt. As the months passed, both species prepared for what they believed would be their inevitable victory. The Vraktar assembled the largest hunting fleet in their history, confident that overwhelming force would crush these upstart humans. Scareth's pack was reinforced by 5 additional hunting groups, each led by seasoned pack leaders who had conquered dozens of worlds. On Earth, Admiral Blake coordinated defensive preparations that encompassed not just military forces, but civilian populations, industrial capacity, and long-term strategic planning. The humans weren't just preparing for a battle, they were preparing for a war that might last generations. The psychological profiles of captured Vraktar prisoners revealed a species that had never experienced military defeat. They fought with the confidence of natural predators who had always been at the top of the food chain. But humans fought with the hard-earned knowledge that in a universe full of intelligent species, victory went to those who could outthink their opponents. As the alien fleet massed at the edge of human space, both sides were confident of victory. The Vraktar believed their superior numbers and natural predatory abilities would overwhelm the humans, as they had overwhelmed countless species before. The humans believed their tactical flexibility and strategic depth would allow them to defeat an enemy that had never learned to fight intelligent opponents. Neither side fully understood what they were about to unleash. The Vraktar were about to encounter a species that treated warfare as an art form, and humanity was about to discover that their greatest weakness might actually be their greatest strength. The Vraktar hunting fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of human territory, like a plague of metal locusts. Supreme Hunter Zarketh stood on the bridge of his flagship, expecting to see a single world populated by the soft creatures his scouts had encountered. Instead, his sensors detected the largest coordinated defense fleet in recorded galactic history. Impossible, growled Pack Leader Vorgath, studying the tactical displays. No single world possesses this many vessels. Where did they acquire such numbers? Zarketh's eyes narrowed as he watched the human fleet formations. Ships of different designs and configurations moved together with a coordination that seemed impossible for a recently discovered species. What he was seeing suggested not one world, but an entire civilization unified for war. On the bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship Defiant, Admiral Blake watched the alien fleet with grim satisfaction. Every nation on Earth had contributed ships and personnel to this defense, creating a unified command structure that represented humanity's first truly global military effort. All stations report ready for engagement, announced her tactical officer. Fighter squadrons are standing by. Blake nodded, then opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Blake. Today we find out if 3,000 years of galactic dominance can stand against 10,000 years of human warfare. Make them remember this day. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner led the first wave of Earth Defense Force fighters into battle, his squadron composed of the best pilots from every military force on the planet. As they approached the Vraktar fleet, he remembered the tactical briefings that had prepared them for this moment. Remember, they hunt in packs, Turner transmitted to his squadron. But we've been fighting pack hunters since we lived in caves. Stay flexible, stay unpredictable, and make them chase shadows. The initial engagement revealed the fundamental difference between the two species' approach to warfare. The Vraktar attacked with overwhelming force and perfect coordination, expecting their prey to break and flee as countless species had done before. Instead, they found themselves fighting opponents who seemed to anticipate their every move. Turner's fighters didn't try to match the aliens in firepower or coordination. Instead, they used hit-and-run tactics, feints, and misdirection that turned the Vraktar's pack instincts against them. When the aliens pursued what appeared to be fleeing prey, they found themselves drawn into carefully prepared ambushes. They're not fighting to win, Scareth reported to Zarketh as he watched the tactical displays. They're fighting to learn. Every engagement is gathering intelligence about our capabilities. The Supreme Hunter's massive claws scraped against his command throne. In 3 millennia of conquest, no species had ever treated warfare as anything other than immediate survival. These humans were fighting with strategic depth that encompassed not just this battle, but campaigns that might span years. The battle above Earth's moon became a masterclass in the difference between predators and warriors. Captain Laura Kim commanded the destroyer Vigilant, leading her ship into the heart of the Vraktar formation. Her crew knew they were outgunned, but they also knew their sacrifice would provide valuable tactical data for the larger fleet. All hands, this is the captain, Kim announced over the ship's communication system. We're going to show these aliens what happens when hunters become the hunted. Prepare for ramming speed. The Vigilant's final charge through the Vraktar formation was not the desperate act of cornered prey, but the calculated sacrifice of professional warriors who understood that some victories required everything. Kim's ship destroyed itself against the alien flagship's shields, but not before transmitting crucial intelligence about Vraktar defensive capabilities. Sergeant Pete Richardson led the first human boarding action against a Vraktar vessel, his Marines using tactics that the aliens couldn't comprehend. Instead of trying to match the Vraktar in individual combat, Richardson's team used coordinated fire and movement, environmental advantages, and technological force multipliers. They're trying to hunt us individually, Richardson reported as his Marines systematically cleared the alien ship's corridors. But we're not fighting as individuals. We're fighting as a unit. The Marines moved through the Vraktar vessel like a precision instrument, each member covering specific sectors while the team advanced with textbook military doctrine. The aliens found themselves facing opponents who treated every corner, every doorway, and every corridor as a potential battlefield to be controlled and exploited. When Richardson's squad eliminated an entire Vraktar pack, using nothing but standard human infantry tactics, the psychological impact on the alien crew was devastating. These creatures had spent their entire evolutionary history as apex predators, and they had no framework for understanding how prey could systematically hunt them. The turning point of the battle came when the Vraktar attempted their traditional finishing move, AE, coordinated assault by their entire fleet designed to overwhelm the human defenses through sheer force. Admiral Blake had been waiting for exactly this moment. "All ships, execute Operation Hornet's Nest," Blake commanded. The human fleet scattered in what appeared to be a panicked retreat, but was actually a carefully choreographed maneuver, designed to draw the Vraktar into a killing field. As the alien ships pursued what they believed were fleeing survivors, they found themselves surrounded by human vessels that had been hiding in the moon's shadow. The final moments of the battle were decided not by superior technology or individual combat prowess, but by strategic thinking that encompassed multiple levels of tactical awareness. The humans had fought as if every Vraktar ship was crewed by opponents just as intelligent and capable as themselves, while the Vraktar had fought as if they were hunting simple prey animals. Zarketh found himself alone on the bridge of his damaged flagship, watching as his once mighty hunting fleet retreated in confusion and defeat. For the first time in Vraktar history, the hunters had become the hunted. "This is impossible," he transmitted to the surviving pack leaders. "We are the apex predators of this galaxy. We have conquered hundreds of worlds. How can soft creatures without natural weapons defeat us?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Murphy, now recovered from his injuries and commanding the heavy cruiser Valiant, opened a communication channel to the retreating Vraktar fleet. "You're not the apex predators of this galaxy," Murphy said, his voice calm and professional. "You're just the first apex predators we've encountered. We've been apex predators of each other for our entire evolutionary history." As the Vraktar fleet limped away from Earth space, word of the defeat spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had lived in terror of the Vraktar for millennia suddenly had hope. The hunters had been hunted, the predators had become prey, and the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted forever. But the humans were not finished. Admiral Blake stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the retreating alien fleet with the cold calculation of a professional warrior who had just won the opening engagement of a larger conflict. "All ships, stand down from battle stations," she commanded. "Begin recovery operations and prepare for pursuit. This war is just beginning." 6 months after the failed invasion of Earth, the galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity launched its first offensive campaign against the Vraktar Empire. General Steve Parker stood on the bridge of the assault carrier Liberty, studying tactical displays that showed Vraktar positions throughout the outer territories. The plan he had developed was unlike anything the aliens had ever encountered. "Remember, we're not trying to match them in direct combat," Parker explained to his staff officers. "We're going to use their predatory instincts against them, make them chase us into situations where their natural advantages become weaknesses." The first target was the Vraktar fortress world of Kethmore, a heavily defended planet that served as a regional command center for 3 star systems. Traditional military doctrine would have called for a massive assault to overwhelm the defenses. Instead, Colonel Gary Webb's forces implemented a strategy that slowly drove the Vraktar insane. Webb's ships didn't attack the planet directly. Instead, they appeared at the edge of the system, engaged the Vraktar patrol fleets for brief periods, then vanished before the aliens could respond in force. Each engagement lasted just long enough to inflict casualties and gather intelligence, but never long enough for the Vraktar to use their superior numbers effectively. "They keep running away," Pack Leader Morketh reported to the planetary commander. "Every time we move to engage them, they retreat. This is not how warfare is conducted." The planetary commander, a veteran hunter named Graktos, studied the tactical reports with growing confusion. In 3,000 years of Vraktar military history, no species had ever fought like this. Prey animals either fled immediately or fought desperately until they were destroyed. These humans seemed to be doing both and neither at the same time. What Graktos didn't understand was that Webb was implementing a strategy developed by human military theorists over centuries of warfare against equally intelligent opponents. The humans were treating the Vraktar like a peer enemy, using patience, misdirection, and strategic depth to gradually wear down their psychological resistance. The psychological impact on the Vraktar defenders was devastating. Pack leader Vorgath, one of their most successful hunters, began showing signs of what humans would recognize as combat stress disorder. His pack had been ambushed 7 times in 3 weeks, losing members to an enemy that seemed to appear and disappear like ghosts. "They're not fighting honorably. Vorgath complained to his subordinates, his voice carrying an edge of hysteria that no Vraktar had ever displayed in combat. Predators face their prey directly. These creatures attack and flee like scavengers. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, now serving as a xenopsychologist with the human fleet, studied recorded communications from captured Vraktar warriors. Her research revealed something that explained the aliens' psychological breakdown. The Vraktar literally could not comprehend a species that had evolved to fight its own kind. Their entire understanding of conflict is based on natural superiority, Walsh explained to General Parker during a strategy briefing. They win because they're stronger, faster, and more coordinated than their prey. But we've spent our entire evolutionary history fighting creatures exactly as intelligent as ourselves. The difference became clear during the siege of Kethmore. Webb's forces gradually tightened their grip on the system, cutting off supply lines and isolating the planet without ever engaging in the kind of direct assault the Vraktar expected. The human strategy was based on the understanding that sometimes the best way to defeat an enemy was to make them defeat themselves. Commander Beth Rodriguez led a particularly successful operation against a Vraktar supply convoy. Her ships appeared to be retreating from a superior force, allowing the aliens to pursue them into what seemed like empty space. Only when the Vraktar found themselves surrounded by human vessels that had been waiting in ambush did they realize they had been led into a trap. "This is impossible," transmitted the Vraktar convoy commander, as his ships were systematically destroyed. "We are the hunters. You cannot hunt the hunters." Rodriguez's response became legendary throughout the human fleet. "We've been hunting hunters since before your species learned to walk upright." The campaign against the Vraktar Empire revealed fundamental differences in how the two species understood warfare. The Vraktar fought to establish dominance through superior force. Humans fought to achieve strategic objectives through whatever means proved most effective. Captain Frank Davis commanded a destroyer group that specialized in what became known as ghost strikes, sudden attacks on isolated Vraktar outposts followed by immediate withdrawal. His ships would appear without warning, inflict maximum damage in minimum time, then vanish before reinforcements could arrive. "The key is that they think like predators," Davis explained to his crew. "Predators expect their prey to either flee or fight desperately. They don't expect prey to have a plan that extends beyond immediate survival." As human forces advanced deeper into Vraktar territory, other galactic species began to take notice. The Cathari Republic, which had paid tribute to the Vraktar for 800 years, sent secret diplomatic envoys to Earth. The Zorlak Confederacy began quietly moving their fleets away from Vraktar space. Supreme Hunter Zarketh found himself facing something no Vraktar leader had ever confronted: military defeat at the hands of creatures his species had considered inferior. The reports from the frontier were consistent and terrifying. Human forces were systematically dismantling Vraktar positions using tactics that seemed to anticipate every possible Vraktar response. "How do they know what we will do before we do it?" Zarketh demanded of his tactical advisors. "Are they reading our minds?" The truth was simpler and more disturbing. Humans had spent thousands of years developing military doctrine, specifically designed to defeat opponents who were just as smart and motivated as themselves. Every human tactical manual, from ancient warfare to modern special operations, was based on the assumption that the enemy could think and adapt. Lieutenant Colonel Mike Foster led a special operations team that infiltrated a Vraktar command center, using techniques that had been developed for fighting human opponents. His team moved through the alien facility like shadows, gathering intelligence and sabotaging equipment before the Vraktar even knew they were there. The aliens discovered the human presence only when Foster's team had already completed their mission and extracted safely. The psychological impact was enormous. The Vraktar had never encountered an enemy that could penetrate their most secure installations without being detected. As the human offensive continued, the galaxy began to understand that a fundamental shift in power was taking place. The species that had ruled through fear and superior force for 3 millennia was being systematically defeated by creatures that fought with strategic intelligence, rather than natural dominance. The final blow to Vraktar morale came when human forces successfully defended the liberated world of Kethmore against a massive counterattack. General Parker's defenders used the planet's terrain and urban environment to neutralize the Vraktar's numerical advantage. turning every building and street into a carefully prepared battlefield. The battle for Kethmore lasted 3 days and ended with the complete destruction of the Vraktar assault force. As the surviving alien ships retreated, they carried with them the knowledge that the galaxy's apex predators had been bested by a species that treated warfare as an art form rather than a natural instinct. Word of the victory spread throughout the galaxy, faster than light-speed communication. Species that had lived in terror for millennia began to hope. The hunters had become the hunted, and the age of Vraktar dominance was coming to an end. The approach to Vraktar Prime was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Karen Blake's fleet moved through space with the measured precision of an apex predator that knew its prey had nowhere left to run. The homeworld that had never been threatened in 3 millennia of galactic dominance now faced an enemy that had systematically dismantled its empire piece by piece. Supreme Hunter Zarketh stood in his command center, watching the human fleet advance with a mixture of rage and something he had never experienced before: fear. The tactical displays showed formations that moved with a coordination that rivaled Vraktar pack hunting, but there was something different about the human approach. They weren't hunting for sport or dominance. They were prosecuting a war with the cold efficiency of creatures that had perfected the art of killing their own kind. Supreme Hunter, "They're broadcasting a transmission," reported his communications officer, voice trembling with emotions no Vraktar should feel in the presence of prey. The message that filled the command center came from a creature that stood barely 6 feet tall, with no natural weapons or armor, but whose eyes held the calculating intelligence of a born predator. Admiral Blake appeared on the main screen, flanked by officers who carried themselves with the quiet confidence of professional warriors. "Supreme Hunter Zarketh," Blake began, her voice carrying across light years with perfect clarity. "I am Admiral Karen Blake of the Earth Defense Force. We come to offer terms for the surrender of your empire and the liberation of the worlds you have conquered." Zarketh's massive frame bristled with fury. "You dare demand the surrender of the apex predators of this galaxy? We have ruled for 3,000 years. We are the hunters, not the hunted." Blake's expression remained perfectly calm. "You were the hunters. Past tense. We are the new apex predators, and we're offering you the chance to survive the transition. You can surrender your conquered territories and join the galactic community as equals. Or you can fight a war you cannot win against a species that has never known peace." Captain Jake Murphy, now commanding the heavy cruiser Valiant, led the diplomatic team that descended to the planet's surface. The negotiations took place in the Great Hall of the Vraktar capital, a vast chamber designed to intimidate visiting dignitaries from conquered worlds. But Murphy walked into the chamber with the easy confidence of a man who had seen real monsters and lived to tell about it. The conversation between Murphy and Zarketh became a philosophical discussion about the nature of strength that would be studied by galactic historians for centuries to come. The Supreme Hunter towered over the human captain, his natural armor gleaming in the artificial light, but somehow Murphy seemed to dominate the room through sheer presence. "You claim superiority based on size and natural weapons," Murphy said, settling into a chair that had been designed for creatures half his height. "But strength isn't about what evolution gave you. It's about what you do with what you have." Zarketh's claws scraped against the stone floor. "The Vraktar are superior because we are natural predators. We hunt, we kill, we dominate. This is the natural order." Murphy nodded thoughtfully. "Natural predators. That's your problem right there. You evolved to hunt prey animals that couldn't fight back effectively. We evolved to hunt each other." The moment of understanding came slowly, like dawn breaking over a world that had never seen sunlight. Zarketh began to realize that these soft creatures represented something the galaxy had never seen before. A species that had spent its entire evolutionary history as both predator and prey to its own kind, every human military tradition, Murphy continued, from the tactics of ancient Rome to modern urban warfare, has been developed against opponents who are just as intelligent, just as motivated, and just as dangerous as we are. We don't fight to establish dominance. We fight to survive against creatures exactly like ourselves. The demonstration that followed sealed the fate of the Vraktar Empire. Major Lisa Torres led a company of human marines in a training exercise against Vraktar elite guards. The aliens had insisted on the demonstration, confident that their superior size and strength would prove human military doctrine ineffective in direct combat. Instead, they watched in stunned silence as Torres's Marines systematically outmaneuvered their most elite warriors, using coordinated tactics that treated each Fraktar as a thinking opponent rather than a simple target. The humans moved through the training ground like a precision instrument, each Marine covering specific sectors while the unit advanced with textbook military doctrine. "They're not fighting us as individuals," one of the Fraktar guards reported to Zarketh afterward. "They're fighting us as if we were humans, as if we could think and adapt and plan countermoves. It's disturbing." Dr. Jennifer Walsh, serving as cultural advisor to the diplomatic mission, explained the psychological impact of the demonstration during the evening briefing. "The Fraktar have never encountered tactical thinking that assumes intelligence in the enemy. Their entire military doctrine is based on overwhelming prey that can't think strategically." The final negotiations took place over several days, with representatives from dozens of galactic species observing the proceedings. The Cathari Republic sent diplomats who had not set foot on Fraktar Prime in 8 centuries. The Zorlak Confederacy arrived with trade, proposals that had been unthinkable under Fraktar. Dominance. Admiral Blake presented the terms of the Terra Accords with the quiet authority of someone who had earned the right to reshape galactic politics. Unlike the Fraktar Empire, human dominance would not be based on predation, but on the hard-learned understanding that lasting peace required strength combined with restraint. "The age of conquest is over," Blake announced to the assembled delegates. "From this day forward, the galaxy will be governed by law rather than the hunt. Species will be judged by their contributions to galactic civilization, not their ability to dominate others." The signing ceremony was broadcast throughout the galaxy, marking the end of 3 millennia of Fraktar rule and the beginning of what historians would later call the Terran Peace, but it was the final scene that became the defining image of humanity's rise to galactic prominence. Various galactic species gathered to observe human military exercises on a training world near Earth. They watched in fascination and growing respect as human forces practiced combat, maneuvers designed not to hunt prey, but to defeat other hunters. The exercises assumed that every opponent would be just as intelligent, adaptable, and ruthless as the humans themselves. Ambassador Chen Wei, now serving as Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, stood with the alien observers as human Marines conducted urban warfare training. The scenarios were brutally realistic, with both sides using every advantage they could gain through intelligence, planning, and tactical flexibility. "This is how your species always fights?" asked the Cathari observer, a being whose people had never experienced warfare more complex than border skirmishes. Chen nodded, watching as the exercise played out below. "We've been fighting the deadliest predator in the universe for our entire history, ourselves. Everything else is just practice." The dog tags, worn by every human soldier, had become a symbol. Throughout the galaxy, identification markers for warriors who had spent their entire evolutionary history preparing to fight the most dangerous opponents imaginable. Other species began adopting similar practices, understanding that in a universe full of intelligent life, the greatest strength came from being prepared to face equals rather than prey. As the months passed, the galaxy settled into a new equilibrium under human leadership, but it was a leadership earned through demonstrated capability rather than imposed through force. The humans had proven themselves the apex predators not through natural superiority, but through the hard-won wisdom that came from facing opponents who could think, adapt, and fight back with equal intelligence. The final message of the Terra Accords was simple but profound. In a galaxy full of intelligent species, the strongest were not those who could dominate the weak, but those who had learned to survive against the strong, and humanity had been surviving against the strong for their entire history.